economy compatible with the county's current base of agriculture and tourism. Currently, between Little Washington Winery and Skyline Vineyard Inn, we employ 12 people. During the summer months, that number will increase to 16. Principle 7 under goal number 12, promote only economic growth that assists in maintaining our existing balance and is compatible with the environmental quality and rural character and does not adversely affect active farm operations, forestry operations, residential neighborhoods, the tourist industry, and the county's fiscal stability. Skyline Vineyard Inn will promote the overall economic growth of the county with no adverse impact on the community. Investigate point 7 under principle 7. Investigate and initiate ways of promoting tourism as a suitable and appropriate form of economic development and ensure that tourism-oriented development is compatible with the rural and agricultural character of the county. Skyline Vineyard Inn meets that requirement. And then finally, under section D of that same point, encourage low-impact tourist housing. Skyline Vineyard Inn is that low-impact tourist housing. Now, the significant economic benefit to the county for allowing the country inn designation will be a net gain. At our targeted occupancy rate of 33%, the county's economic benefit will be approximately $6,000 per year over a by right agricultural use. That revenue will be derived from the county's 2% lodging tax on the gross revenue from each room. Compare that to a mere 1% of the county receives from the sales tax generated by the by right agricultural use on that same $1,000. If that $1,000 revenue comes from a by right use such as peaches, apples, flowers, or any other agricultural product, the county enjoys a mere 53 cents as opposed to a $20 on that $1,000 worth of revenue generated. The positive impact is contributing to the principles and policies of the proposed comprehensive plan. Minimize traffic impact on the community. First, let me quote a letter dated September 17, 2019 from Joseph Webb of VDOT. Specifically, he states in paragraph 3, VDOT is not opposed to the special exception. Mr. Webb did raise a number of concerns that we addressed specifically in the traffic study performed by Wells and Associates. Mr. Webb did raise a number of issues that we have addressed in that report. In general, though, because of 33% occupancy, country inns of this size generate less traffic than a fully occupied house. More specifically, the traffic study conducted by Wells and Associates concludes that the net traffic increase will go from 98 to 106 trips per day on weekdays and increase from 160 to 160 trips per day, well underneath the 200 trips per day that the VDOT is looking for that specific intersection. In conclusion, Donna and I are asking that you approve the country inn designation as recommended by Ms. Summers in her staff report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Board members did have any questions for the applicant, now would be an appropriate time to ask the questions.
Mr. Hendrickson, thank you for the application, and I know I've met with you and your wife a couple of occasions. I missed you yesterday when I came by. Happy anniversary.
Well, thank you.
I heard you were out celebrating.
It was our 4th. Was that right, Donna? 4th? Seems like 16 years to me.
My fundamental question here is the special use permit originally granted for the property was for a 2-bedroom B&B, which then became a 3-bedroom permitted use. And there's some debate about whether it became a 5-bedroom permitted use under an expanded special use permit. To me, well, let me put it this way. I'd like for you to explain a little bit to me and my colleagues on this board how or why you are pursuing this country inn designation and how we should evaluate this application given that the number of guests associated with the country inn as defined in your application would bring more traffic onto that road. I know you've stated some numbers and analysis already, but to me it just right off the bat suggests a much more intense use of Clark Lane, which obviously is we all would agree is a quite narrow right of way up to your end. So
Okay,
I'd just like to understand how we ended up with potentially more intense use here.
It's not more intense in terms of cars, it's more intense in terms of people. So let me make, there's 6 bedrooms. The owner's suite is the 6th. Don and I live in that on a regular and recurring basis every evening. There will be moments when we have a new economic or business venture that we're initiating. It's called Dirt Road Wine Tours, that is consistent with our Dirt Road Wine Club. And those tours will take us out of the country for, I hope, 6 times a year for a week or longer. In those moments, we hope to be able to rent that suite, the owner's suite, thus the increase in occupancy. The other rooms, we've had a number of instances where we've had families with children, and a child is a person. And the Haven, which is a good example, we've got a queen-size bed and a queen-size fold-out couch. And in most instances, that is what we call our kids and dogs room. And that's on the far side of the 3-car garage. And if you've got a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old that likes to have a temper tantrum every once in a while, you're more than welcome to go spend all day in that room, in that side of the house. But we're talking about more people, not necessarily more cars. We will still have 5 bedrooms. Occasionally there will be 6. And that's the reason for the designation from to the country inn.
So explain the assertion that you would have more people but fewer cars.
I didn't say fewer cars. We'd have maximum 5 cars, but we'd have more people. And the more people would be mostly in the form of children.
Okay.
Teenagers, infants, but we have a couple of instances where we've had teenagers come and accompany their parents as well. Still coming in 5 cars because we only have 5 rooms.
And what about within our zoning ordinance, what about the country inn designation did you find attractive, and why did you pursue an application in this regard?
Oh, there's a whole host of reasons. One is the pure number, and the second reason is if Don and I are going to take these trips on these Dirt Road Wine Tours, then there's an opportunity for some additional revenue. Third one is I'm a fan of special exceptions rather than special use permits. I think these sorts of decisions that are revenue generating opportunities for the Board of Supervisors, I think they belong here and not in an appointed body. So that's kind of my own personal philosophy. Whether it has any bearing on anything or not, I don't really care, but I think that's an important element as well.
Okay. And do you own the property?
I own the company that owns the property. Don and I are sole stockholders in Skyline Vineyard Inn, which is, the legal name is Harmony Manor B&B.
Okay.
But we're the sole stockholders.
And the Fords do not own it any longer, is that correct?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
There's no other questions from the board at this time. Did you have something, Ms. Donahue?
I did. Check in and check out times for your inn or for the B&B at this point.
Oh my gosh. Check in at, check out at 11.
So the cars are coming and going at the same time, basically.
You leave at 11 because you got to be out of there by 11, and you can check in after 3. So no, that's the
After
opposite
3.
way. That's the opposite way.
Okay. And then do I understand you've got wine tastings or something going on in the basement? If I hear there's some sort of classes or something?
Yeah, we have, since, since they turned us off for paying guests, that we've increased the number of guests that are coming to the tasting. And if we are granted the 5 bedrooms, then we'll turn off the tasting, and we'll only have 5 people in the inn.
So the people doing the tastings are not the people in the rooms, it's a combination of
It's
the
a
two?
combination. Ever since they turned off, we've only had guests in there who are wine guests. We've increased that capacity. We've increased the operation out on the sale on the 211 with the sign. As soon as we get the permit here, that gets turned off and we go back to being B&B.
I noticed when I visited it yesterday, I guess it was, it appears that you have a footbridge connecting your Christmas Tree Lane property, which is Little Washington Winery,
That is correct.
over to this property.
That is correct.
And what's the purpose of that footbridge?
People, equipment, we've married the two from an ABC standpoint, so we can serve wine on the porch to guests if we want, but mostly it was to absolve the responsibility of putting our zero turn on 211 and shooting
Yeah.
up the road.
Thanks for not taking that.
But it's also people, and it's also me. I enjoy walking that walk
Yeah.
too.
And you and I discussed long ago, I think it was probably during the early summertime, it was just an obvious question I had for you in light of all of the frustration, many of the people who live on Clark Lane about heavy use of that lane. Given that you already own the directly adjacent property, if it might be possible for you to connect the two properties with a road and move all traffic off of Clark Lane. Is there anything you would like to say in that regard, or anything you'd like to explain why you can or cannot?
There's a young man by the name of, he's the right-of-way wonder of the world.
Okay.
I called him up and I said, can we connect the two properties?
Okay.
Connect 65 Clark Lane with a driveway that goes to Christmas Tree Lane. And he said, only if you have the permission of all of the downstream users. So we went to the cottage, I can't remember her name, but she said no. So if I subdivide that property, there's an interesting proposition. If we bring it down to 5 acres and I subdivide that 25 acres into 5 parcels, those 5 parcels then get by right use of that Christmas Tree Lane. If I add a parcel, and this is a Supreme Court decision, if I add a parcel, I need permission of all of the users on that road who will then be serving that property. And we went down there and put together a proposal and she said no.
Okay.
And so we are stuck with Clark Lane. And so part of the reason for putting the walk path in there is to allow guests to walk there rather than drive around.
In addition to what it sounds like would be 5 vehicles when you're at full capacity for the country, and could you describe as just part of doing business, this type of business, what other vehicles would we expect to see on Clark Lane? What other service providers might come to your property, and in what types of vehicles would they travel?
Once a month, this morning, we got a delivery of napkins from Virginia Linen and the petroleum truck, and that's it. Wine deliveries are all done at the tasting room because that's required by law.
So once per month, linen delivery? And propane, okay.
Where are your employees parked?
That would be, right now, it's Amanda, and she parks down on the far side. Sometimes she parks up by the garages. Depends on what she's doing. If she's cleaning the Haven, which is on the far side of the 3-car garages, she may park there, so she'd have to lug all her stuff that far.
But when you started, you said you have 12 to 16 staff? Where's the other-
12 to 16 staff between the two properties, between Little Washington Winery. Amanda she serves part-time at Little Washington Winery and the other part-time at the inn.
So where do the
one.
others park?
Okay, they all park down at the tasting room. Essentially right now, we only have one employee at the inn, and that is Amanda. And she'll park either on the far side or she'll park near the 3-car garage.
So you have 11 employees over at the winery,
Yes,
full-time?
not all full-time, no. Essentially 2 full-time, the rest of them are part-time.
If there's no other questions, I think we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing if that would suit everyone.
Madam Chair, will we have an opportunity to circle back with additional questions as
We
they
can
arise?
definitely do that after
Okay.
we close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Thank you. All right, at this time I would go ahead and declare the public hearing open in regards to this special exception application from the Hendersons for Skyline Vineyard Inn. When you're recognized, please come to the microphone, state your name and the district that you're from. If you could keep your remarks to about 3 to 5 minutes, we should be all set. Thank you, and with that, I declare the public hearing open. Who'd like to speak?
My name is Jock Nash, and I live in the Hampton district with my wife Yoko. Thank you, Madam Chairman, for having this hearing, and it's good. This is the first time since 2002 that the Board of Supervisors has ever considered this issue regarding Harmony Manor, Skyline Vineyard Inn, or Gary Harvey for that matter. It's a long and very sad saga, and it's time to bring it to an end. Back in 2002, Gary Harvey, single at the time, got a residential building permit for Harmony Manor. He built a 10-bathroom, I think 6-bedroom hotel almost. He did it on a residential building permit. John McCarthy did not require him to get a zoning permit, which is the law. It says to get a building permit, you shall get a zoning permit. Why is that important? Because whoever's getting the zoning permit has to state explicitly what they're going to use this new building for. Gary Harvey didn't have to do that. After building this very, very large, substantial building, he proceeded to run an illegal B&B. Complaints of the neighbors, again and again and again, got the county administrator and also the zoning administrator to finally, where they got tired of it, and they brought a prosecution where Gary Harvey, I think, pled guilty to a zoning violation misdemeanor, was fined $1,000 and 1 year probation. He then went bankrupt. Shortly thereafter, Randall and Kimberly Ford bought it for $600,000 in a distress sale. They immediately applied for a B&B permit. They asked for 2 bedrooms. That SUP was the recommendation from the zoning administrator was to deny. The recommendation from the planning commission was to deny, primarily based on the fact that it's this very small country road, private lane with a 30-foot right-of-way and a partnership driveway. The Forts, when the Fort started, they asked for the 2-bedroom. They got the 2-bedroom, despite the planning commission and the zoning administrator. They went and asked for a 3-bedroom. They asked for 5 bedrooms, but they never got it. They said, okay, you can have a 3rd bedroom, but you cannot, get the 4th and 5th bedrooms unless you do 2 things. You have to get approval from VDOT for the entrance from the highway onto Clark Lane, and you have to build turnouts at approximately every 300 feet. They did not do so. When ultimately they decided to sell the place, that they still were working off a 3-bedroom B&B, but violating it all the time. Ultimately, they got a divorce. Kimberly Fort wanted to be the hostess with the mostest, and if you look at any of the reviews of Harmony Manor when they owned it, all the guests loved it, for good and sufficient reasons. But when they got divorced, it stood empty for 2 years. That was the only piece that we've had on Clark Lane, was that 2-year period. You have to remember, we are the only private lane with a 30-foot right-of-way with a commercial enterprise on it in the entire county. After the Forts sold it, they sold it to Hendrickson's for reported $1.3 million. They immediately started operating a 5-bedroom B&B, even though they only had 3 bedrooms. They never had more than a 3-bedroom special use permit for that building, ever. Ever. They said that they built the turnouts, they didn't. And so time lapsed and they lost out. He appealed it, but when the law firm saw the writing on the wall and what he had agreed to, they withdrew their appeal. When the Henricks started operating this place, they did it on their own rules. They didn't follow the rules from the first SUP in 2012. They didn't follow the rules in the 2013 SUP. And they continued to violate complaint after complaint from the homeowners and the residents of Clark Lane. Finally got to the attention of the Board of Zoning Appeals, which revoked, for good and sufficient reasons, the B&B permit. But they gave them some slack. They said, we'll give you until January 31st to try to work something out of this year. But they still kept doing everything that caused the earlier revocation. So the BCA held yet another hearing and revoked it effective immediately. Right about that same time, they applied for this intensive use of the country inn. There are scores of reasons that this application should be turned down. Yoko and I can go into gruesome detail if you wish. Many of the things that we'll say contradict what the owner said earlier. We're not under oath, but the thing is, they never had a 5-bedroom B&B, even though their special exception application says we're only going from 5 to 6 bedrooms. They never had 5 bedrooms. But all the way through the application is rife with error, misstatements.
Mr. Nash, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to just ask you to wrap it up for time concerns.
Yes, I'll wrap it right now. But now is the time for the Board of Supervisors to put an end to this thing. All the residents on the lane have suffered because of this, and I don't believe the Hendersons apply the law or follow the law. Being in business is not just about making money. It's also about following the rules, and they don't follow the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Yoko Barsky, and my husband and I are the direct adjoining neighbors of the Hendricksons. Last week, I had sent all the members of the board an email explaining in detail all the objections and misstatement that's on the application. And just about everybody agreed on the Clark Lane, agreed on it, and then they signed the statement. So there are more signatures than the ones that you have. And I like to, yes, for official record, I like to signature. All the same thing except the signature page. That's it's all the residents except one couple, the Whartons, but they said that they had sent you a separate email.
Correct.
So that completes everybody on Clark Lane. And so, based on that, this was always the problem and issue on the road, the very narrow road. As Mr. Whitson said, if they connected those two and they came through Christmas Tree Lane, business probably would flourish. I'm sorry. But using Clark Lane, which doesn't qualify for any kind of commercial traffic, as you can see on the picture that I did the overlay on existing Clark Lane, what's required by the VDOT. I'll give you one. I'll give you for agritourism, it requires a 50-foot radius and 30-foot width of road. We have barely 11 feet, only on the throat about 14 feet. So no way it qualifies as agritourism. Or light commercial, which requires a 25-foot radius, still it doesn't qualify for what we have. The last year, BZA revoked 2 special use permits. It issued to Harmony Manor, and then the Harmony Manor appealed to the circuit court for the BZA decisions. We don't even have the court date for that hearing. So this is still up in the air. So why are we even talking about this? One other thing I wanted to say is that this looks like the result of all the mismanagement, mismeetings, I don't know, just mistakes and all kinds of no zoning law enforcement. So that has resulted in this kind of confusion. And I know Ms. Somers is really working hard to correct a lot of these issues. But she's just by herself. She needs help. It's working really hard. So I would like this board to consider and explore options and means to help her out in enforcing the zoning laws. I think that's something this board can do, as well as to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Miller?
Damaris Miller, Hampton District. I don't live on Clark Lane, but I have friends who do. But even if I didn't, I've been up and down that road, and it is narrower than our driveway. When we came to this county, we understood that this county was maintaining the atmosphere that we love because of their zoning. And we foolishly assumed that meant that people actually paid attention to it. But we have since learned that there are plenty of people in this county who operate by the idea that If you want to do something, go ahead and do it and ask forgiveness. Don't bother to get real permission. If we're going to operate that way, why have zoning? Why have zoning? This has been going on for years. I've watched the progress of it in the newspaper. Approved with a special exception for 2 bedrooms, operated as 3, 4, 5, add anything you want, just keep creeping along and they'll let you do it eventually. You'll eventually get real permission. Now I'm envisioning, after hearing this tonight, that the owners will go off to Europe for 6 weeks and they will have this inn operating with 6 bedrooms with people who aren't residents of the county living in these 6 bedrooms. And who's even there to look after it and make sure that they are obeying the laws and the rules and taking care of the neighborhood? I really feel for the neighbors on this road. They have a right to expect this county to protect their rights, and that includes enforcing the zoning and the rules that we have about what you can do on a 30-foot right-of-way and what you can't do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Schultz, Hampton District. My wife and I, Brigitta, live at 58 Clark Lane. The closest home on the lane is 65 Clark Lane. There may be people in this room wondering, why would somebody with approximately 25 acres care what another property owner does on their approximately 25 acres? It is the shared narrow private lane. Let me start by telling you about life on Clark Lane before the construction of the building at 65 Clark Lane about 18 years ago. Our front porch is about 100 feet from the lane. We had beautiful pastoral and mountain views from it. We had 1 and then 2 homes above us on the lane. It was a very quiet and peaceful lane. I would say there was much more wildlife traffic than vehicular traffic. With the construction of the building, 65 Clark, and knowing its intended purpose of being a tourist attraction, we planted over 200 new and cypress trees along the road for privacy. There went our pastoral view and our quiet lane. With 65 Clark Lane, we have endured 3 different owner-managers. Each had the same purpose, to maximize their profit at the expense of the residents of Clark Lane. There has never been just a resident at 65 Clark Lane. It has been a commercial establishment since it was built. We now endure heavy and dangerous vehicle traffic. Our lane condition is deteriorating rapidly. There is a VDOT tourist attraction sign on Lee Highway suggesting travelers come up Clark Lane. We endured weddings from all 3 owners. Coincidentally, all 3 said they were for family or friends. The last wedding was amplified music outside. It was so loud that at almost 10 o'clock at night with our windows closed, I could not turn the TV up loud enough to drown it out. We have had a dog hit and left for dead. My wife and I were sued personally by Harmony Manor because they said they could not enjoy their ingress or egress because of our trees. The lawsuit encumbered us for several years and cost us thousands of dollars in legal fees before the suit was dropped. We endure weekend wine tastings. We have endured 2 senior proms, pedestrian tourist traffic, a Porsche rally, Gone with the Wind dinner, Oyster Fest, tour buses, and more. I could go on, but I think you get the point. The only business Skyline Vineyard was ever allowed to conduct was a 3-room B&B, no for-profit events. That SUT has been revoked by the BZA for violations, although business appears to operate as usual. I ask you to deny this application because increasing the usage would bring more danger to the residents of Clark Lane. The Hendrickses have shown they don't follow the rules, and this application would be difficult to enforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, my name is Kathleen McHugh. I'm from Jackson District. I hesitated to come up because I don't live on Clark Lane, but then when the kind lady behind me spoke, I thought I have to say my piece. I've known Carl and Donna now for probably more than 5 years. They're great members of the county. They have provided us with a lot of happy times at their establishment. They're bringing business to Rappahannock County, which I see as a great thing. I live in a single-family home right on Butown Road, but I still have what I consider a very bucolic environment with which to live, even though it can be like the Autobahn on Butown Road at times. I also have neighbors that are within 10 acres, 13 acres that have parties that go until 10 o'clock at night because there's not a noise ordinance. And I still hear that, and we have to turn up our TV or even our air conditioner just to drown it out. It happens, but it's not every day. And I just can't imagine that the traffic is going to be so horrible that they couldn't run a business and I think improve Rappahannock County and still have everybody live in harmony. I just can't imagine it's as, when I heard gruesome as one of the descriptions, I thought, gosh, that's just so drastic. But again, I understand I don't live on Clark Lane. I just wanted to get up here and stand up for Carl and Donna because I think they're great members of the county.
Thank you.
My name is V.L. Elliott. My family and I own the property at 184 Clark Lane, Midland Road. We've owned it since September of 2018. On 4 different occasions, I or my family members have been run off the road by traffic coming out of the Hendrickson place. Twice for me, twice for my daughter and her grandchildren, and our grandchildren. Just as a matter of safety, stop this. Stop this. This is bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is James Clark Jenkins. I was born and raised on Clark Lane. I live at the end, the second house, so I don't get all of the, like where Brian Geller lived, the noise and all that. I just see the traffic. I'm a person, I have insomnia, so I'm up a lot at nights. And I do not look, see where to go. I've seen vehicles come in as late as 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. And when he stressed like 5 vehicles, 5 rooms, that's fine, except those 5 cars go in and out 6 and 8 times a day. So it's the traffic continuously on that road. And the events some of you have, like last spring, my son from Richmond was up helping me with yard work, and he had a Porsche convention, and 10 and 12 cars at a time were coming in and going out. So that's a lot more traffic in 5 vehicles. And like I say, those 5 vehicles, if he rents 5 rooms, they're not going there staying. They're going in and out. And this is continuously all weekend. And I'm taking for granted that last fall it was his business. The traffic was so bad, they had someone at the end of the driveway directing traffic. Well, on the event. So it's not just 5 vehicles, it's those 5 is continuously in and out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? With that, I declare the public hearing closed. All right. Do we have a particular vein of conversation or a motion that we'd like to pursue to guide the conversation going forward?
Madam Chair, I represent the Hampton District, so I think I should take the lead here. I'm happy to do so. As mentioned, I've met with the Henriksons a couple of times. I've known them for a number of years. I respect very much their business acumen, their marketing creativity, their ability to brand. They are clearly running successful businesses. They're contributing to our county's bottom line. None of that is in question in my mind. In visiting them and visiting other residents of Clark Lane, which I did a lot. I just ran for office, so I was out visiting people, including those who live on Clark Lane. There's no doubt to me that that is an extremely narrow road, and it is not a safe one in my view for robust commercial activity. And obviously we have inherited zoning decisions in the past that we and the residents of Clark Lane are living with now. The application here is very specific, and I want to be clear that my motion tonight pertains solely to the application for a country inn. There's been discussion tonight about whether agritourism on that property is appropriate or not. That's a separate question. So tonight, I just want to be clear to everyone that our determination relates solely to an application for a country inn. In my view, a country inn in that location is not appropriate given the size of Clark Lane. This is not a by right use. Our zoning ordinance makes it clear that a country inn requires a special exception permit. And what that means is that a country inn might be appropriate in certain locations and not appropriate in others. And special exception permit applications eventually come to this body. And as Mr. Hendrickson pointed out, that might be why he took this route. And so we're here to hear the arguments for it. And I've concluded that in applying the general standards for special exceptions, which are enumerated in section 170-52 of our zoning ordinance, that given the narrow lane that is Clark Lane, and given the relative increased traffic that would result from a country inn in this location, subsection G, and let me read this, subsection G of these general standards would not be met. The proposed use will not result in unsafe conditions in relation to community facilities existing or planned as relates to adequate police and fire protection, and danger and congestion and travel and rescue services. And my concern there is both for guests of the inn, but importantly for the other residents of Clark Lane, many of whom have spoken tonight. And I do think that we as the governing body in this county hold great responsibility to make sure that we ensure the public safety is preserved. And in my opinion, a country inn and a heavier use in that location flies in the face of the general standard for special exceptions enumerated in subpart G. And therefore, I would like to make a motion that we deny this application on that basis.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Any further discussion or any questions for the applicant that we can go through at this time? Do you have a roll call on this?
It'd be good to know.
Does anyone have anything further on this application? Very good. And then I'll call for the vote. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also. Thank you, and I'd just like to also thank our planning commission for their work through that application. That takes us to our next public hearing, the special exception 19-1202, Risk Strategic Management, and Mike Wise, amendment to current special exception 18-05-04. Ms. Summers, if you would be so kind.
Thank you. RSM has requested a special exception permit to allow for additional training days. This property is owned agricultural, is 84 acres in size, and is located on Sherman Lane in Amesville. The applicant owner currently provides training for life safety situations, and all training is conducted outdoors. The current special exception permit application that's being requested is to increase the number of training days permitted from what was approved in the permit special exception 18-05-04, with all other conditions remaining the same. And the 2018 permit, it was approved, has conditions that state a maximum of 3 training events days per month shall be held at the property. Furthermore, there shall be no more than 2 training events per week. And training events shall be limited to a maximum of 3 days per month between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday only. This application, 19-1202, seeks to increase the usage, and when first submitted, requested to replace the 2 conditions stated above with training events shall be limited to a maximum of 5 days per week between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for the special exception permit application on January the 15th and voted 6-0 to recommend that the Board of Supervisors deny the application. Subsequent to the Planning Commission public hearing, the applicant voluntarily proffered revised conditions less impactful than those considered by the Planning Commission. The applicant's revised proffers conditions included all conditions included in the 18 permit except for training 5 days a week with a limit of 10 days a month. The Health Department has no objections to the increase of the frequency of training. No comments were received from VDOT, although the application was sent to them requesting such comments be provided. Again, this was properly noticed in the local newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks, and the applicant comes present for any questions.
Mr. Blythe, do you have anything to add?
Yes, please. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Back in 2018, we originally applied for Old Kennels Lane. We were opposed on that. We were suggested to give a larger acreage, which we did. During the application process, we indicated that we were running approximately 3 days a month, and that then became the set limit. The process was quite arduous in nature, so by the time we got to the end of it, we accepted anything we could get. Currently, we're running courses of anywhere between 5 to 15 people. But unfortunately, what we're limited at is 3 days a month. So we're actually having to turn down courses. Next week, we're running a course for 6 people. But that consumed all of our time. So that's quite an inhibitor for a small business. We realised that maybe 20 days a month was too much, so we withdrew it. We also sought multiple means to address the 3 main areas of concern that we identified with neighbours. That being noise, traffic and crime. We've also been heavily investing into the local community, often going for a potentially higher price rather than going out to some of the big supermarkets and so forth for products and services. And we've committed since 2018 to the end of this year over $850,000 into the community, and we sent you the financials on that. We anticipate putting another just under $1 million to a tune of about $1.8 million over 5 years. And as a small women-owned veteran business, that's quite a significant investment for such a size company. We only train humanitarian aid development groups, those going out and doing good work around the world to support women, League of Nations, and so forth. So we're attracting people who are good members of the community, good members of society. We have an opportunity with the World Bank and their development sector to run small courses of about 10 to 12 people, but that requires us to have a few more training days, and that's why we're making the application now. In terms of noise, we actually conducted multiple sound tests and we evidenced that we could actually bring the noise down to less than an air conditioning unit at 100 feet. We have had 2 members of the Planning Commission come out, and they attested to that as well. We've offered members of the community to come with us as well, so they can see it firsthand. We offer to buy decibel readers if people want to do their own sound testing, and we're even willing to pay for a commercial company to come and do an impartial sound test, so that there's no ambiguity over the amount of noise that we're making. If the neighbours want to choose that company and engaging directly, we will pay the bill, because we know we can bring the noise down to less than somebody shooting on a range a long way away. We have multiple ranges in the immediate area, including a range immediately adjacent to our property that is making significantly more noise than we are. So I don't think we're actually causing any harm. If there are any noise problems, we will pay for barriers to be erected to deflect the noise back into the forest. So we will do whatever it takes to bring the decibel reading down to under 68 decibels. Noting the ambient noise is about 45 to 50. So we're literally making almost no noise. In terms of traffic, we did a study, and we anticipated that if you have a 2-adult family with a vehicle, and they went up and down the lane twice each a day, we would actually do less than 67% for that if you gave us 10 days. So we're not actually causing any more traffic than a family, in fact quite significantly less. So we're not causing any issues. We go once in the morning and we leave in the evening at the end of the training. We've also offered to pay more for the maintenance on the road. So we're offering to pay double the family unit, and we've offered to pay more per course that's run beyond that. So we're not derailing the road in any shape or fashion. The other concern was over crime. I used to be a chief of police for the Commonwealth Office many years ago, and I can say to you, bringing in people where they're bussed in by us, they don't know where they're going, they're escorted around during the day, and then they're taken back to where our office is in Manassas, there is almost 0% chance that we're elevating crime within the area. They don't know where they're going, they have no means to actually identify where they are, and then they're taken away. We've offered to also black out the windows to alleviate fears, and we will even take the phones off of them and put them in those little special bags to block signals if that alleviates any concerns. So we're willing to do anything it takes in order to reduce concerns. Further to that, because we do a lot of pro bono work for schools around Virginia and North Carolina, we're also offering to run training for schools. We have a Master Instructor School Security course that we do around the country, which trains teachers to deal with security threats. So we're willing to invest in kind about $48,000 into any school in Rappahannock in order to contribute to the community. We'll also run exercising programs. We design exercising programs for government agencies, and we'll run one for the county of Rappahannock for free. We'll also develop school security plans and policies on security issues, and again we'll do that for free. So we're offering to further invest beyond the $850,000, over $200,000 of services into the county to be good members of your community as well. We are happy to work with any members of the neighbourhood. So far we have 5 written neighbours saying that they are more than happy for us to continue the training and do more. We've got 2 further who have verbally said it's not a problem. So we've got 7 neighbours saying this is not an issue. And we'll have a number of businesses as well who are benefiting directly from our work. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Have you done any improvements to the road yet?
We've offered to contribute to the main sugar lane.
Right.
Yeah, we've been told that we will be asked to make payment, and we're waiting for that request.
And you said you invested a whole bunch of money. Where did that money go? You said you invested like this.
We've been hiring local businesses to provide all the services. We're also building an office in Warrington, and we've hired local businesses to do the work there as well. So we're literally going first port of call to the businesses of Rappahannock.
What?
And they bought the property.
And they bought the property, right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, are there any structures there?
Temporary structures, all removable.
Any other questions for the applicant?
After the public hearing.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Same rules apply. Please wait to be recognized by the chair. Approach the microphone, and we're off. Yes, sir.
Bill Strain, Wakefield District. And I would just like to reiterate what Mike was saying about using local businesses. He could have gone anywhere to get his catering done, probably a lot less money. But he chose us, and he's been using us since he started. And it's been a positive impact on my business, Skyward Cafe and Food Hill. Especially this time of year, where business is generally slow. It gets us through these months. It allows me to hire another full-time person, and it's really been a positive thing for our business. I deliver each time, twice a month since he started, personally. I get there, they want me there 7:30ish, but sometimes 7:45. I drive in, there's some couple of instructors are there, never any students, drop things off. At the end of the day, sometimes they'll call me a little early, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I come there, 5:30 at the latest, I'll get there. But I never see any students, everything's packed up, organized, put away, they're just waiting for me, I take my break, and I leave. And I just wanted to say that from what I've seen, very organized, professional, and good company. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strang. Anybody else wishing to speak? Sir? You're next.
Good evening. My name is Tim Jones, Jackson District. First, the noise issues. The noise and blank shots fired during RFC's trainings are not in line with the documentation provided. We are hearing shots much louder than the equivalents of an air conditioner, which Mike Blythe states in his revised amendment. February 2019, RSM's training operation shot off several extremely loud shots around 9:15 that rattled the windows in our home. And after speaking on site with the staff and by Mr. Blythe by phone, I called Ron Mackle of the zoning office, informed him of the situation. Ron came over to our house and was present when the 12:30 shots went off, which were only half as loud as the 9:15 shots, and Ron said, quote, "I would not live with that." Mike Blythe came to our home that afternoon and had his staff do testing, different types of blank shots in different locations. I was not allowed to witness the shots or the equipment being used, but I did agree to the sound of the blank shots that sounded similar to deer hunting rifles and asked nothing louder. Mike Blythe agreed. Please note that the good neighbor, we allowed the blank shots much louder than submitted to the county to obtain RSM special permit. RSM complied with the agreement with the blank shots for a couple of months and occasionally got louder as we fired, and even louder after that. I did not reach out to Michael Blythe because if a man can't honor his word, I have no use in talking to him. Mike constantly states he will be happy to do noise tests to ensure RSM is unduly disturbing us. Second type of blank shots and devices used to shoot Mike Blythe was at our home, and he showed me a short shotgun shell and said this is what they're using as noise simulators. During the discussion, Blythe also told me that the blank short shotgun shells were loading devices to be thrown on the ground and discharged as a shot. January 21st, Christian Blythe made a phone call to our home, and she told me she was surprised.
Excuse me, the person at the microphone has the floor at this time, please. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. She was surprised how loud the decibel readings were with the handheld devices and that the instructors were throwing. Christian also told me that she ran the office and Mike ran the training site, and she did not know what Mike was shooting. Both Mike and Christian Blythe spoke freely to me about the shotgun shell blanks and the handheld devices thrown on the ground to discharge the shot, yet they never mentioned the type of shot or device to the county. Mr. Blythe compares the shots fired at RSM's training operations to be similar to the community hunters. This is so far from the truth. First, hunting season is 3 months a year. RSM shooting rights for 12 months. Is asking for 12 months. Most hunters do not shoot 5 days a week. The hunters shoot about 5 to 10% of the days they hunt when they have a clear shot. They shoot once or twice, not burst a shot several times a day. Non-hunting season hunters and gun owners sight in the new guns, no hunting season hunters and gun owners sight in the new gun and scopes, occasionally target practicing. In fact, this past Saturday, a close friend of mine came up to use my range, and he got a little carried away, and it lasted about 15 to 20 minutes, and I asked him to come to down relief, and he left. Mike Blythe could not wait for an equitable solution involving all parties on the morning of December 26th. We heard a loud shot. I rode the property to investigate. I found Mike Blythe trespassing on my property, and he was radioing instructions for test shots to someone on his property and recording sound level for his training operations. Blythe knew he was not on the property, and he even told me his property line was 10 feet inside the tree line of the power line easement. As an adjoining landowner, I strongly oppose RSM extending their operations to 10 days a month. We tolerate three days a month, but 10 days a month destroys the peaceful country life that we cherish in Rappahannock County. We bought this property to retire and enjoy the quiets of the Rappahannock County. I do have a range on mine that I use maybe 10 to 12 times a year, and I'd be more than willing to tear that down. It's a temporary structure. I'd be more than happy to tear it down if the county would revoke his special permit. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? No. Yes, sir, you were next. I apologize.
How you doing? I'm from the Jackson District.
Yes, sir.
Robert Cross, and I live on South Road. At the two, yeah, I rode on that for a while. At the 211 end of South Road Road. And I've never met this gentleman before, but I know he's worked to a third-person party to make things as smooth as silk. Now look, noise carries. I can't say that this man didn't hear him shooting. It's all the way the wind blows sometimes. Noise gets amplified, especially when the humidity brings down the noise. Because, like, I'm so sick of hearing the Amosville Firehouse siren. After 2 times, they're not coming. Turn the damn thing off. You know? All night long, it blows. 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So anyway, everybody has a little noise they have to put up with. Tractors, cows being separated from their calves, weed whackers, lawn leaf blowers, lawn mowers, zero turns. Look, I ain't saying he can't do things to make it better for this gentleman next door, but if he does what I know to make things work as well as possible. And as far as the traffic on South Post Road, I've never really noticed any more coming down my road by this guy having a class than any other time of the week. Weekends, I don't think he does anything, but the week, you know, a lot of times I don't do anything, and the normal amount of traffic is the normal amount of traffic. More people that live on the road abuse the road than anybody he has coming down, because I've run them down and told them, don't run over my dogs, don't run over me coming down my own driveway. They won't even let me come off the road in the evenings when I park my truck. So I think this guy will work with y'all. I don't see, he's trying to run a business. Everybody, you don't want to run every business away from the county. You know what I'm saying? He needs to do his work as long as he works with you and tries to comply. I think he should have his 10 days. It ain't hurt nothing from me. But, you know, everybody has to live with a little noise sometimes. But he shouldn't be up there blowing up the top of the mountain, I don't know. But if you're just shooting shotgun shells, they do it all the time around my house. If it ain't deer hunting, it's dove hunting, groundhog hunting, something. There's a gun going off all the time. Some guy just hangs his 9 out the back door. I think he's just shooting things. But you know what I'm saying? It's just, you have to get used to it. Anyway, nice sign at the firehouse.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Tom Dean, I live in the Jackson District. I might border, other than the Sportsman's Club, more land against RSM than anybody else does. Work for the government contractor, like most people are in Virginia. So I've dealt with a lot of travel overseas with my various jobs. Government has a very much scaled up facility to do like training, not exactly. It's on 9,000 acres. 87 acres boils down for me, not enough to run any type of training of this type. So, go from there. I bought my land about the same time that Mr. Blythe did. I was not notified of this when I received a letter. I would have been standing here then objecting to this. I understand from the previous meeting that really there were not many objections. Knowing the type of people that like to travel overseas for various reasons, some are good, some are bad, but it's a higher concentration of bad than good. This is just in my experience in my career with the government. It's been 20 years of me dealing with overseas travel. With bringing the volume of students in, it exposes more people to my neighborhood. And of that, there's going to be some criminality to that. My house, like most probably in the country, probably don't lock their doors. I was not hoping to move into a neighborhood where this type of traffic would be. If I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have bought it. If I could sell it for what I have into it, I would. I can't. As some people know, building a house is terribly expensive versus just buying one. I have spoken to Mr. Blythe on the phone in regards to my concerns, and mostly it comes down to the criminal aspect in that neighborhood. You know, you move there, you have neighbors in and out, you don't have people from the city, you don't have large volumes of people you know nothing about, no background checks on these individuals coming. I'm sure there's many of them that have nothing but good intentions, and I'm positive just equally there's some that have bad intentions. I'm not interested in having them know where I live, know anything about my neighborhood, or traveling in or out. There's no way to prevent them from knowing where they've gone, in my estimation. I will say this, Mr. Blythe, in my opinion, has tried to mitigate concerns. My concerns too, he offered up many suggestions. I just don't think there's a mitigating factor. And again, I don't think there's enough land, 87 acres, to provide any type of trade. When I attempted to build 2 homes on 103 acres, I was told no. So, and I had to come to a very expensive conclusion, with the county, that cost me more money. You wouldn't think you had 103 acres, you'd have to build, well, you know, the structure I have to build to accommodate it. To that end, bring that up, because if I had to jump through so many hoops and spend so much money just to get my house there for my parents and my family, I can't imagine you can run a school on 87 acres. It seems, doesn't seem fair to me. As regards to other, I'm moving in shortly. I'm not happy about this situation. I don't have enough money to go do this again. Just please consider that with your decision. Thank you.
Are you on Sturgeon Lane?
Sure.
Yes, sir. I border a very large percentage of that property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, my name is Joyce Jones. I'm a resident of Jackson District and adjacent landowner to RSM's training property. Our house is the closest to RSM's training area. Our joining property line is a 250-foot power line easement that is clearest of all trees, not buffered by any dense forest. I'm concerned with the false statements contained in the amendment application and this revised amendment application that were detailed in the letter to the Board of Supervisor members, especially the noise levels. The excessive noise level started in February of 2019. RSM shut loud explosions that rattled our windows. My wife came to our house that afternoon and did sound tests with my husband. They agreed on a sound test level for future training days, which lasted a couple of months. That's when I responded to Mike Bly's email that the sound level was okay. Over the summer months, explosive shots got louder and louder, and by fall of last year, the majority of the shots sent our dogs running to the house in fear. We have not contacted Mike Black again, just as my husband said regarding the noise level, because it'd be pointless if he didn't honor his word about what he agreed upon. Especially when we agreed upon a noise similar to a hunting rifle, which was much louder than the compliance levels that he submitted in his application when he got the SE permit. Mike Black's actions speak much louder than his words. A pattern starts. In December, Mike Black took several planning commission members to RSM's training property for tours. During the show and tell, Mike Black fired the half-charge blank shots detailed in his application and did record 58 decibel readings in the slideshow that was presented to the PC. Black stated the sound was similar to an air conditioner. What's interesting was on December 26th, like my husband said, we heard loud explosive shots while in our home. My husband went to investigate and found him trespassing on our property during the sound test with someone on his. If he is so confident of these half-charge blank shot decibel readings, why is he doing sound testing shots with some much louder blank shots, especially without asking permission on our property? Again, Mike Black's words, actions speak much louder. His actions speak much louder than his words. The pattern repeats itself. In his revised memo proposal, he includes a noise survey. This is pointless. In my opinion, they'll be on their best behavior while the noise survey is being conducted and go back to shoot any blank shot they want, and they can, because the current SE permit that they have does not, the operating conditions do not contain any limits on the decibel levels for their training. The pattern will repeat itself just like it did after the county's officials visited in December. Please do not be misled by him again when you have witnesses from neighboring residents that the noise level is significantly louder. If you need further verification, if our sheriff's office could recommend a polygraph expert, my husband and I would be glad to take a test to verify that the shots we hear are much louder than an electric shaver or coffee pot, or the small appliances he lists in his application, or the air conditioners that he now includes. RSM's application includes letters of support. These letters are misleading because 5 of the 6 are business partners with them, including 2 families that live on Surgeon Lane. RSM pays them for their services, so of course they're going to say that they want RSM to continue training. RSM's revised amendment application states that the training participants arrive in 3 vehicles. This is not in compliance with the condition 5 of their current SE permit that states, and I quote, "Arrivals and departures of trainees shall be restricted to 2 minibuses." I think that this should cause great concern to all Board of Supervisor members. The 3rd paragraph of RSM's revised amendment application reads, "Our amendment application in 2018 stated that 3 days was the current tempo of training. Current tempo of training was in quotes. I reread RSM's SE permit 180504 application and did not find those words anywhere. In fact, what I did find on page 7 of the application under the frequency of training section with the following sentence, and I quote, "Currently, the frequency of training is one course every 1 to 2 months, lasting 1 to 2 days. Documents that are submitted to governmental agencies should not contain false information. Their current SE permit allows for 3 days per month. The revised amendment application is requesting 10 days per month. This is a 333% increase in allowable training days. It's a very significant increase, especially when they are only training at 1/3 of allowable participants. They're having to cancel, but if you don't train 30 at a time, why are you canceling? We agree with Mr. Dean that we would have not bought our land here if RSM was training operations were in existence. I'm asking you to please deny the application. But if you are considering approving the application, please add an operating condition of a maximum noise level of 60 decibels. But I would appreciate if you would deny it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for Michelle for what you do right now. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, Rebecca.
I'm Julie Street. I am the owner of Karen Cafe. I don't hear the noise, but think, please, what they do, this humanitarian thing that they do is such a wonderful thing. They're willing to freely train the teachers. I mean, they're willing to give to this community so much. I feel like, and they're a new business. All new businesses have glitches that they have to fix. You know, maybe he hasn't gotten it right yet. I believe that he will. But really what he's doing is a blessing. I mean, he is doing things to help people. And I think that if it's possible to give him a chance to do everything that he's going to say, I believe that he will. Again, he's only been 2 years. I mean, it takes a little time, but he will get it, and soon, I believe. But he is helping other businesses, and what he does helps people around the world. And I'm sorry, I just had to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Oh, got one on the way.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm David Connick from I'm just speaking as a private citizen on this. You've got the recommendation of the Planning Commission on this. There are two things about this application that concern me. The first is, well, not exactly this board, but the Board of Supervisors gave the applicant a permit about 1.5 years ago. And there was a lot of contention back then about it. They made some proper conditions that they agreed to, and the neighbors agreed to that, as I understand it. And then it was a 5-year permit. And now, a little more than 1.5 years or so after that permit was issued, and as Mr. Whitson properly pointed out, special exception permit, things might be appropriate in some places, but not in others. And if they are, maybe only with certain conditions. And the board made findings that this activity was only appropriate under whatever conditions they agreed to. And so whether it was or wasn't, and whether that was a good decision or not, I'm very concerned as a citizen about permits like this that have conditions that were basically agreed to by the applicant, then before the term is up, coming back in, and all these same arguments about how much they buy from the restaurants and how much money they're injecting into the county and all that, which I'm not sure what that has to do with zoning. But all those same arguments were made, and all these noise arguments were made, and all of the traffic business and so forth. The board, maybe not all of you, but some of you have heard those same arguments. And that was the basis of granting the permit in the first place. So I'm just troubled when, before the time is up, that they agreed to 5 years, they come in for an amendment. If there's some extraordinary or unforeseen circumstances, which I haven't heard anything about that, maybe that would be appropriate. But unless there's something like some unusual circumstance, I think it's just wrong. The other thing that I want to say as a citizen, not as a member of the planning commission.
Excuse me, can I just say, is this
No,
not a
sir, you
conflict?
may not. He has the floor. You will have another opportunity to speak. Thank you.
I'm very concerned about the precedent that would be set, not only about the first part of what I said, but the part about after a proposal has gone to the planning commission and been reviewed, that the applicant can then keep on coming back and amending it, and it basically circumvents the whole process that we have that's elementary to our zoning, that all these kind of permits go first to the planning commission. They give a non-binding recommendation to the board, but if people can come in after that process is halfway over and then change it, then basically the board has no recommendation and no valid recommendation from the planning commission, because what's before you tonight is apparently something different than what they reviewed and voted on. So I think that's just, whether it's these people or anybody else, I just think that's a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connick. Anyone else wishing to speak? Oh, Ms. Sturm, you had your... I see you in the back. You'll be next. Let me just be clear that whomever is at the microphone has the floor. Thank you.
My name is Jim Woodard. I live in Amosville. I shoot. I'm a hunter, what have you, just like a lot of the rest of them. The other thing that does bother me with the state is now that we have hunting on Sunday, our Sabbath. Other than that, I don't know this gentleman. I don't know what his experiences are, what have you. But as a kid, I got drafted or what have you. I joined the Navy Reserve. I went in the Korean War, and we had just 7 weeks of training to get ready in Bainbridge, Maryland, and we fired just single-shot 22s in a building. Although we'd had other training up at places like Newport, Rhode Island, at the War College and what have you, and we shot and shot. But I bought 5 acres for my in-laws in Amosville, bought and built a nice little house in 81. I had the property since 78. But every Sunday, the people next door to me are shooting. They come in from down Fairfax and different places. They shoot all day, Saturday, Sunday. The man across the street from me, he hates geese. He shoots at the geese every time they land on his farm. Now I have a couple of rental houses that they've divided the 50 acres into 26 acres into 2 acres. And we have rental houses now, and those people are shooting all the time. I don't think we need to have some kind of ordinance in this county with noise. Now, whether it's shooting or what have you, we probably need some kind of ordinance to start straightening some of this stuff out. Mr. Fraser there, I've questioned him on a lot of things through the years, and it just seems like we're spinning our wheels in this county. We need to get some laws that got some teeth in them, and also somebody to enforce the laws. This poor girl can't do it by herself, the zoning or what have you, but we need somebody to straighten this county out. Whether it's Mrs. Smith here, and the other lady now, we've got some females on the board. I think we need to look at ourselves very good and see what we need to do to straighten this county out a little bit. I'm a little appalled at the amount of taxes I pay, and no more services than I'm getting. But I think we need to do something. But this man here, I'm not picking on him. I'm from England. My family was and everything else and all. That's where Woodard came from. The only thing they did drop the one W. Other than that, I wish I could spend some time talking with him, but it might be inappropriate at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your time.
Excuse me.
Anyone else? Oh, yes, in the back, thank you.
I'm Brian Adams. I'm in the Jackson district. You know, it seemed like a lot of people want to talk about us because we do work for Mike. So I just want to put it straight, you know. He's offered us the job, we work for him, so does it for everybody else. And these people that are complaining about this stuff are doing the very same thing that he does. And they're doing it a lot more than they say. And he's offered numerous times for everybody to come there and watch and do it. I suggest y'all take him up on his offer and look. You know, he's done everything we've asked, even though the people, the neighbors that they've asked, requested, not trying to mitigate it. He's always bent over backwards to try to do it. I really don't see why, you know, he's getting thrown under the bus for this whole thing. I think y'all need to look at it a little harder and support him, because I mean, he's actually bringing money into the county instead of everybody taking it out. And I can't help some people move here to retire. This is not a retirement thing. We're here to work, you know. I'm not retiring, I work every day. And you know, and he's just another business guy trying to come here and draw money, work, make a living like everybody else should. And that's all I got to say.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Hardy?
Patty Hardy, Hampton District, also Rappahannock News. I just want to point out what this last gentleman said, that Mike has invited everybody to come and watch. And just to set the record straight, when I, as a member of the press, asked to come and watch, I was denied.
Thank you, Patty. I think I saw another hand in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Kendra Settle Wakefield District. My family owns a small business in Rappahannock County, and I'm just here to attest that Mike and Brady and RSM crew do get their provisions from us, and we very much appreciate the business as we try to employ Rappahannock natives. And I know it doesn't really have much to do with the zoning, but they do stand up to what he said about doing business in the county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir, in the back.
I'm Bill Anderson, live at 143 Sturgeon Lane. Actually, I was on the BZA for many years. It seems unusual that this application would be heard at this time, because essentially it's dead, as I can understand. It should go back to the planning commission. But at any rate, the last gentleman that was denied up here was saying that they had only a 30-foot right-of-way, only one in the state and the county. Our right-of-way starts out as a 16-foot right-of-way, branches out to a 50-foot, starts out as a 16-foot, one-lane gravel road. We don't need any more traffic. It's not so much what Mr. Bly is doing now, it's what he wants to be able to do. Many times what he has been allowed to do up to this point. Mr. Bly was asked for and received 3 days. Mr. Bly asked for and received a 5-year commitment. I think you were sent the letter that I sent into the planning commission. Hopefully you had a chance to read it. So I'm not going to get into the law involved. That states just about everything. Virtually everybody here that's been pro is also on Mr. Bly's payroll in some form or another. You're paid by him directly or indirectly. As far as being humanitarian, it's a business. I'm a humanitarian. I've built houses so people don't have to live in tents. So I'm a humanitarian. My next door neighbor works for Dominion Electric. He's a humanitarian. He puts electric in people's houses, so, you know, it's a business. I run a business, Mr. Bly runs a business. Basically, that's it. I just refer back to my letter. And the point is that he got what he asked for. At the very least, we should keep it for another 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, with that, we'll declare the public hearing closed.
May I just,
You're the applicant, sir. If you would just let me close the public hearing, please. Thank you. And with that, I declare the public hearing closed. Did you have additional comments that you wish to make, Mr. Bly?
Yeah, I just want to apologise for interrupting. When I used to be in the Roaring Commanders, Mr. Connick did a double tap there. He had his opinion on the first hearing, and then he seemed to feel...
Is what you're saying relevant to the application?
No,
Okay.
Sorry, my apologies. I'm more than happy to work with Tim and Joyce. I've offered multiple times to do it. They don't seem to be inclined to participate. I offer it again in front of everybody. When we did the sound testing, we didn't change it.
Please address your comments to the board.
We were trying to identify positions removed from them to reduce the noise. When we took the board around, we went through exactly the program with the board, shot by shot, minute by minute. We don't start shooting at 9:15 in the morning. We're actually briefing them at that time. There's often a case where people hear gunshots and they think it's us, and it's not. In fact, I've received a phone call from Tim saying, "You're shooting now," and I said, "No, we're not. We're doing it next week." So often there's a misunderstanding of where the noise is coming from. I make it in front of everybody here that we will go through a formal noise test, minute by minute, shot by shot, to demonstrate exactly what we're doing. In terms of inviting the media, you need to understand that we're dealing with people who are doing their training, realistic training. We can't have the media walking around. I'm more than happy to meet with you, have an interview. You can interview some of my staff and I'll give you a full story. But we need to protect the rights of the people being trained. They can't be photographed because we need to get their written permission. You understand that? But I'm more than happy to work with the media as well, and you are all invited to attend any training course you want, any time you want to attend it. Because we are committed to doing what we say. As a retired officer in the Royal Wing Commanders, I am a man of my word, and I take a little bit of offence when somebody says I'm not.
I don't think we want to go down that rabbit hole this evening. Thank you, sir. Does the board have any questions for the applicant at this time? Mr. Fraser, I believe this is in your district.
Excuse me, it is. I'm still trying to get over whatever I had for a while. I'm in a quandary. We've got several people in the community that are well thought of, that are supportive of this application, and several of your neighbors that aren't. But this isn't the same application at this point that you had in front of the Planning Commission. And some of the offers that you were making here tonight aren't actually part of the application either, so I don't know that we can consider them. Makes it kind of tough on me. I don't know what we're actually looking at as far as an application. Unless you'd be willing to go back before the Planning Commission with this, my recommendation right now would not be for it. Because of the neighbors.
Am I meant to answer that? So I don't need to.
I mean, I don't know. The trouble is we're having a public hearing on something that we had a public hearing at the Planning Commission that wasn't the same application.
I do think that puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage from where we would normally be.
Yeah, I mean, that's my problem. I'm normally more black and white or whatever, cut and dry, but I'm kind of confused, which isn't hard to do. I'll admit that. I get confused easy.
May I answer that question?
I haven't actually heard a question yet.
Oh, sorry.
Well, again, my question, I guess, to the applicant is, unless you'd be willing to go take this back in this current form with everything that you're proffering as part of the application, I can't be supportive of it tonight. Because I don't know what you volunteered to do a lot of stuff that's not part of the application.
I would think that now would be an appropriate time for you to respond.
So we're advised we can make a change as it came to you. I'm concerned if we step back, judging by the fact that the chair stood up and actively opposed it as a member of the community. that there would be a heavy bias for opposition regardless of what we put forward, however reasonable, because the chair moments ago just stood up as a private citizen and opposed it publicly. So I don't think going back, we would even stand a fighting chance even if we did everything that everybody wanted us to.
He's just one of 7 members, though.
That's true.
The problem is, a lot of the things that you volunteered to do tonight are not actually part of the application, and I don't have a running, without them being in writing, I don't even have a running idea of what we would be.
The majority of the change was reducing it from 20 to 10. All of the other offers in terms of doing sound testing and so forth, barriers were in the original application.
But even at 10, it's quite a substantial increase
Yeah, I
in,
appreciate it. Yeah.
in use. And that's what your neighbors are opposed to, is the substantial increase.
Understood. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Parrish.
I just have a comment. What Mr. Craig says is correct. You have the right to keep going like you're going for the rest of your 5 years. You have the right to come back in the meantime with another request. And you got, it seems to be quite a few of your neighbors supporting you. And my suggestion would be to do what you're doing and appease the concerns of the rest of your neighbors, and then come back with another application.
Oh, so are we allowed to withdraw and then apply again in the immediate
You
future?
can come back in a year or 2 or whatever.
Can you refresh my memory on those rules, Mr. Goff? I think it's, but if we vote it down, they can't reapply within 6 months, is that what it is? 1 year, okay. So if you withdraw, you could make a new application if they withdraw, I would suppose? It would need to be a new application if you withdraw this application, and you could reapply at any time.
Okay.
That's what I'd do if I were you.
Correct
I'm
me
not
if
trying to
I'm wrong.
advise you, but
No,
all you got to do is get the rest of the neighbors happy,
Yeah.
and you can probably, and work it out ahead of time with the rest of your neighbors. And see how that goes.
I think that's good advice, and I will follow your suggestion.
My suggestion would be along the same lines. I somehow ended up at many of the meetings that involved your original applications when I was running for the Board of Supervisors. And they included some very interesting meetings where I think you were originally referred to as a shooting range, which really brought a lot of people to those meetings to voice their displeasure at that application. We've come a long way since those applications came through, and I was on the board when we approved this initial special exception, and I think, like my colleagues, we thought that this has a similar use to what you could normally anticipate in an agriculturally zoned area. I think maybe for some of the neighbors, it's exceeded those expectations, especially in terms of noise, and if you could revisit these issues with your neighbors and establish decibel limits and have, cooling off period, then you may be well served to withdraw this and make another application at a later date.
Okay. I will apologise to Michelle for making her go through yet another application process for this.
She thinks of it as job security.
She's already got another one of my children. Yes, I will take your advice. Thank you very much. I make a public offer to Tim and Joyce to see every single weapon system we use. I'll even let them shoot them if they want, and we'll go through the entire programme so they can see exactly what we're doing step by step. I fly to Guyana tomorrow morning. I'm back on the 12th of March. I know I can't look over my shoulder. I'm desperately not trying to look at them. I'm back on the 12th of March, and at the time of their convenience, I would show them around the land and show them all the simulations we do. And if they're willing, I will stand on their property while my wife, who's firing off the effects, does it. And then if there's anything too noisy, we will move that person somewhere else to create further distance between them, if they want to do that with us.
Sounds like we're tabling the application. I think that.
Withdrawing.
Oh, you're withdrawing?
Yeah, table would be
Okay.
an official act by us.
So I guarantee you, you're not as loud as some of my neighbors are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a short recess and reconvene at 5. Thank you. back to order. This will bring us to our final public hearing of the evening, special exception 19-01-01, Long Owner and Capiali Leslie Contractor Yard. Someone will present the kindness.
Thank you. Mr. Long and Mr. Capiali have applied for special exception permit for contractor's yard. The property located at 14168 Lee Highway, Amesville, identified by tax map number 3132A. The property is 17.8950 acres in size. The applicant proposes the size of the contractor's yard to be 2.62 acres in size. The application was initially made on January 25th, 2019. It was reviewed by the Planning Commission at the March 20th, 2019 meeting for a preliminary review, in which a motion was made to consider the application in a future meeting, once there was a completed site plan. The motion carried with a vote of 6-0. Without a completed site plan submitted, the Planning Commission amended the agenda to include pending application and discussion of a deadline. Mr. Cavalli submitted additional information, which was placed on the June 19th agenda. At that meeting, a motion was made to table the application since the time limitations could not be met. The county attorney opined by memo dated July 17 that the clock does not start running on applications until it's placed on the board's agenda. At the September 18, 2019 meeting, the commission voted to table this application until the applicant addressed items missing from the site plan. At the October 16th meeting, the zoning administrator reported that all outstanding violations had been brought into compliance except for operating contractor's yard without a permit, and all the items for the site plan were addressed. The health department commented on March 19th that they saw no evidence of an overt system malfunction. They did recommend the well cap be replaced. It is their understanding that the proposal is to build a farm building and proposed shop, which would have no plumbing involved, therefore no need for water supply or septic system. They had no objections to the request. VDOT has indicated through email that VDOT will need the locality's approval for the proposed use in the site plan prior to issuing a land use permit through their office. The Planning Commission held a public hearing at the regular meeting on November the 20th. After much discussion, the Commission recommends denial of this application based on the economic impact, changes to the residential, rural, and agricultural area, and the impact on tourism with the location of the scenic entry to the county. The vote was unanimous. This was advertised properly in the local newspaper, and applicants are present for any questions.
All right, Mr. Capielli, do you have anything to add to Ms. Summers' comment?
Yes. In light of what she just pointed out, that the reason that there was a denial at the planning commission. The view shed of the county will remain scenic, and the derelict property is being reclaimed to become not just a benefit to the owners, but to improve the adjacent properties and increase their value. The property has steadily increased in value in direct proportion to the improvements being made. Number two, the contributions to the quality of county life.
Would you mind talking a little bit closer to the microphone? It's a little bit difficult.
Okay. Most of the time, most people can hear me far. They tell me I'm too loud.
Thank you.
Look at that, we have our own stage hands. Number two, contributions to quality of county life. We have worked in the county for over 5 years, building ponds, driveways, stream crossings, producing hay, rehabbing homes, distributing organic compost, clearing land, and generally contributing to both the economy and the maintenance of the county proper. The activities that we have already benefited the county through donations of time, materials, equipment, expertise, and efforts in tandem with ongoing agricultural uses of the property. Number three, it is to the benefit of an aging county to foster small family businesses that will provide reasons for younger generations to stay and work in the county. This approval allows that to happen, and it gives entrepreneurial young residents a path to staying in the county. We are working with the school to begin training high school students in trades that can positively impact their lives and their community while repairing the historic buildings, including this one we're standing in. Number 4, the actual neighbors living adjacent to us support the approval of the permit. They had come to support that approval at the Planning Commission, but were not given the opportunity to speak. They have signed letters, which you have in front of you, some of them. I just received one within the last half hour. Somebody came here and gave me one. He had to go home and put the kids to bed, so he didn't get to stay. We help our neighbors all the time when they find agricultural tradition evading those on neighboring properties and the time-honored back and forth. This permit should be approved as it's denial would spark a veritable domino effect of requiring all the county's small contractors to either apply for such a permit or close down their businesses. Even those relying on being grandfathered in place would have that revoked at the state level. That effect on the economy of this county, as well as the financial well-being of our neighbors, would be catastrophic. I have met with most of the members of the board at one time or another in the recent past. We had Mr. Connick and Mr. Atkins contact some of our neighbors, 2 of them in fact, and they said that we were going to cause them not to be able to enjoy their homes and lower the values of their property, which was interesting. Mrs. Nicholas is 90 years old, lives in Charlottesville. The tenant that they had was a nephew. Up until recently, he had 23 different police calls to the house. These are the reports that came with him. You have some of the copies. And in the end, he left because our own county's little crack sales house was finally closed down.
I hate to interrupt you, Mr. Capulet, but I fail to see how some of these side roads are germane to the application. I'd like to speak to facts of the application.
That's what I'm doing. This is...
You're speaking to the character of your neighbors,
No,
and I don't
no,
think that's
no.
germane to the application. I'd like to hear about your application, please.
Okay. Just specifically to the application, we've spent a lot of time with the different members, including yourself. In the recent past, we've worked very well with the county. We're willing to continue to do that if need be. I've offered to make this a temporary, probationary, whatever wording needs to be for 6 months or a year or whatever. And that way, if anything does come up, we would be able to address it instead of it being a 5-year permit. And answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions at this time?
After the public hearing.
Sounds good. That's all we have at this time, Mr. Capulet. Thank you. And with that, I would open the public hearing, the same rules as the last 2 public hearings apply. Please come to the microphone, state your name and the district that you're from. And if you keep your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, that'll keep us right on track. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Connick?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is David Connick, and I'm here tonight representing Jack Atkins, who I think most of you know. We submitted a letter to the board. Did everybody get it? Okay. So I'm not going to read you the letter.
I guess it should be a requirement.
What?
It should be a requirement.
I read it. I'm just not going to read it to you. So the highlights of the letter are that this application doesn't conform to the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and specifically section 170-52 and the general terms and conditions for all special use and special exception permits. One of which is that it won't have an adverse effect on the neighbors and the use and enjoyment of their property. And this is just an eyesore. I was very interested to hear Mr. Capielli just make the comment that he has worked well with the county. And I'm not sure what that means, but the record is, as Michelle read to you, this is the culmination, tonight's hearing is the culmination of a series of violations that goes back 3 zoning administrators and all the way back to October 31, 2016, when they were first cited for a violation. And they got numerous extensions they said that the same exact words: we're working with the county, we're working with the county, we're working with the county. And they kept right on working with the county until Mr. Goff finally, or Ms. Summers finally, got criminal warrants. First there was a civil proceeding that is still pending, and then ultimately criminal warrants were issued against both Mr. Long and Mr. Capielli. And those, all have been resolved except one, which relates to this permit, which is operating a contractor's yard without the required permit. So I don't know what he means by working with the county, but that's not, when you basically disobey 3 or 4 or 5 citations for violations. I don't call that over a period of 3.5 years. I don't call that working with the county. One of the other conditions that you have to make a finding on is that the application is in conformity with a comprehensive plan. And in my letter, I laid out numerous principles and policies that are set forth in the comprehensive plan, which neither the application nor whatever comments were made tonight have addressed. The primary one is that agricultural land should not be taken out of agricultural use for commercial use unless there's some extenuating circumstances. And there haven't been any shown, there haven't even been any extenuating circumstances claimed in this case, other than this is what they want to do. The proposal, I don't know, this is another moving target of how much land is going to be, where this building is going to be, and how much space is going to be occupied. But near as we can tell from what's been submitted, it's going to remove pretty much half of the agricultural land of this tract. Part of it's forest and part of it is agriculture. It's going to take away half of it for the use of this so-called contractor's yard. And that's a clear violation of the comprehensive plan, which we don't think the board should approve. Last but not least, I want to bring up something about the neighbors, because I have to say, I think most of you know, I've been involved in zoning in this county since about 1977 or so. I'm a former zoning administrator. I practiced zoning law in my private practice of law before I was zoning administrator and after. And in all those years, in my public service to this county, and in my private practice, not only in Rappahannock County, but in Fauquier County, Culpeper County, Warren County, Louisa, Page, and Fauquier, if I didn't already mention it. I've done zoning cases in all those counties, very contentious. As you see here tonight, some of these things, it's neighbors against neighbors, and they can be very, very contentious. But in all that time, that spans nearly 40 years, I think, I have never in my life seen anything like this. This is a letter that Mr. Long and Mr. Capielli, sent to Mr. Christie, one of the neighbors to this property. And just last week, on Wednesday, it was sent. And basically it's a threatening letter that unless he withdraws the comments that he made at the Planning Commission last fall, there's going to be some kind of repercussions. And like I said, I've seen a lot of things and a lot of different zoning matters before. I've never seen anybody try to intimidate their neighbor not to come to a public hearing like this by force or violence or anything else. And I don't think that this board should condone that. I think it ought to be condemned. It violates the whole principle and process of the rule of law that we have in Rappahannock County and most everywhere else in the country, that people have a right to come out and speak for or against something, and people may disagree and so forth, but to threaten your neighbors if they don't retract their comments. And P.S. Mr. Christie called me today. I didn't know about this till today when he called me and he sent me this letter. He's scared to come here. And I don't know about the other neighbors, because 2 other neighbors wrote it. They're not here either, so I don't know if they got a similar letter or not. But I think it's outrageous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Anyone else wishing to speak? We have Mr. Atkinson back in the back, please.
A little information will give you first.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Jack Atkins, Jackson District. I'm getting tired. I have to come to these public hearings and keep doing one right after another. It's wearing me out. It's going to hurt my pocketbook too. Mr. Capelli just stated he's been working in this county 5 years. He has no permits. Have we allowed this to continue? October 2018. I got a letter here, and Mr. Pally wrote he's clearing a portion of this property for agriculture. He don't say a word about a contractor's yard. He wants to do agriculture back in 2018. We have a special use permit, section 17052, general standards, A, says it will not be visible from any adjoining properties. This is not true. If Mr. Jordan decides to retire and come back to Rappahannock County and build a house on his property, all he is going to see is a mess below him. And I mean, it's a mess. Section B, you have pictures there showing blocking traffic. There's also letters opposing from all neighbors, Mr. Christie, Freddie Nichols, and Terry and Lisa Jordan. I spoke to all of those, and they still oppose this application. Section E of the same. The future impact opposed will not and will not address establishing a time limit on assisting recent development during some comprehensive plan. There's no need for me to read all that. Not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, point blank. Proposed unit will not cause impact for historic scenic qualities of the immediate area. Will not impact the scenic qualities. I don't see how they want to pass if you look at it. Go on to a regular decision of the Board of Supervisors on the Brown application in 2006 on 7 Ponds Road. Non-compliance with section 17052 A, B, and E. This application is also I and J. On the application of 17057A, no explicit statement status for the proposed units. Use. They denied it. And also you got a copy of stuff went on Rappahannock advertising his business. Still has no application approved to operate a contractor's yard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Yes, sir. I'm back. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, Ms.
Not that it's needed, but I will repeat for the record. We have zoning for a reason. And our biggest reason right here is to maintain the quality of life we have in Rappahannock. If we allow this kind of thing to happen again, it's a message to others. Just come on in, do what you want, don't pay attention to the laws and to the regulations and to the zoning. Just do what you want, and if you keep hammering long enough, they'll give in and let you do it. And I don't think anyone on this board wants that to be the message we send to others. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Carolyn Brown Butler, Sperryville. I just would like to say that, remind you all that in December of 2006, my nephew came before this board. He was a BMI graduate civil engineer. He was a retired Army Ranger, and he wanted to start a business from his property, which is 25 acres on 7 Ponds Road. And you all denied it. And there's no regrets. But what I want to say is it should be across the board. He was a many-generation Rappahannock native, and he was turned down. It did hurt his feelings, but he picked himself up and went to Prince William County, and he's very successful. So there are other places to do that. Right on 211, when you come into the county, is really not the place. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Let's have Sheila and then Jen. Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I asked you to speak first, Ms. Gressinger.
Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. I've listened to this for a long time, and I appreciate everybody's opinions. The reason I think part of this was turned down at the Planning Commission, there was a principal argument that at the entryway to our county, our view shed, you didn't want anything to impact or detract or be a detriment as a welcoming for people coming into our county. And that's why I took the pictures that probably some of you have on your desk. And I showed this to the Planning Commission because that particular argument doesn't hold water. Because when you're coming into Rappahannock County on 211, going west, I've shown this picture before, that this is what you see. This is the one I took Sunday, just yesterday, because I'd taken one prior and there were still some leaves on the tree, and I figured, oh well, I better have something more current. So this is what you see. This particular property is over to the left, and you cannot see anything except a rooftop because it's downhill from the thing. So it does not impact on the view shed at all. Then the other thing I took on Sunday, going east, looking at the same thing, and here are the trees. You can't see that yard even with all the leaves off the trees. So it's not an eyesore or impacting to people driving by. Now, as far as pictures of the property, there was a specific time when somebody wanted to demonstrate that there was chaos going on the property, and they used a drone. They used a drone to show. So that to me dismisses the thing that it's an eyesore. The other thing I want to bring out is that over the course of time, yes, there were lawsuits, and this probably was able to get the property people's attention. And so they did come up with a plan to be able to organize things. Now, it is used for hay, that's documented land use. For a long time, they were growing produce, and so that was part of the chaotic pictures that were taken of the greenhouse and all of that were used for produce for food pantries. So they were a productive part of contributing to our county. The other thing, over the course of various ways of trying to organize their business, they finally came up with the concept of the contractor's yard to try to organize the property. And so there is a site plan where the contractor's yard is using 2.5 acres, and that was discussed at planning commission meetings and zoning, so as to totally take that particular part toward the back and have it fenced off or separated so that particular part would be contained. And the rest of the property was, as I just said, there's land use, and there's also, they do want to start doing the gardening again and everything. So if you look at the site plan and then you drive on the property, incrementally they are getting things done so the property will look like the site plan that's been submitted. And so as Mr. Capielli did say, and what I was going to suggest is what we've done with some permits before, is approve for a year and then see how it progresses in that year. Have they in fact done the buildings that they said they were going to, and the specific things that were appropriate for the contractor's yard are actually organized back where that is supposed to be, and put the thing in a review of a year from now and see how it's done. And it could be revoked at that time if they have not in fact done it, and then do it as an increment every year for 5 years. I don't know if they'd agree to that, but that's what I'm suggesting.
Thank you. Mr. Mason?
Ben Mason, Stonewall, Hawthorne Street. I just want to say I think we need to follow the rules. I owned a contractor's yard in Tyson's Corner, and I got chased out of the neighborhood pretty quickly. Moved a company that lasted 25 years somewhere else. And I go down there now and I think, you know, if I'd been able to pull that off, it would have really been an eyesore. Because it's a residential neighborhood. So somewhat akin to this example, it would have been an agricultural usage here. And I don't want to change that. We need to stick to our guns and follow the rules. So,
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Anyone else wishing to speak? And with that, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Whitson, I believe this again is back in your district. Did you have any thoughts or any questions for the applicant?
Thank you. I appreciate all the time that Mr. Capielli and his son John and wife Beth have spent talking with me, and I know that you've also spent time with my colleagues in, as you said, recent days. And it's been very helpful for me. I think I first visited your property maybe in November of last year, came back again sometime in between, and then was there again last week. And have driven by in recent days as well, just to take a look at various vantage points and how the property looks from 211. At the risk of repeating myself from the earlier application, I just want to emphasize here again that this determination is very specific to an application for a contractor's yard, and that definition is one that I've gone back to, especially over this past weekend as I've been trying to review the record in full and consider all of the facts. And I just want to make sure that everyone in attendance understands what a contractor's yard means within the meaning of our zoning ordinance. Establishments for the construction and or repair of buildings, roads, and utility lines, installation and servicing of heating, cooling, and electrical equipment, flooring, painting, plumbing, roofing, and tiling, and or excavating. And Mr. Capielli endured a long series of questions from me last week. And really my effort was to get a handle on the scope of your business, and you were helpful in that regard. And we looked at it from a revenue perspective, we looked at it from question of where you do your work, the types of work you do for whom. And the conclusion that I have reached in light of this definition, which is really the lens with which I've been analyzing the application and all of the materials that have accumulated on the case record, the conclusion I reach is that the amount of equipment there, the type of equipment there, even if contained within a contractor's yard, to me, in the aggregate, is mismatched with your business activities. And that does concern me because, as I mentioned to you on the telephone when we spoke the other day, and I don't say this to offend, but I'm still left with the distinct impression that with the number of inoperable vehicles, containers, and other equipment that do not directly relate to your core business activities as you described to them, that a contractor's yard doesn't solve the problem that this is, in my view, ultimately more a junkyard, which is not a permitted use in a zoned agricultural area. So for further discussion, I will make a motion that based on the general standards pertaining to special exception permits under 170.52 of our zoning ordinance, including subsections A and E, and also incorporating by reference the Planning Commission's prior recommendation for denial, which is based on Principle 7 of the Comprehensive Plan. I will make a motion to deny this application.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I can second that.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion or questions from the applicant? Or questions for the applicant, perhaps? And Mr. Capielli, if you have anything to add, I would think now would be the time to do so.
I'd like to address the letter that was just mentioned. If you look at the letter itself, Mr. Christie, letter to Mr. Christie stated that I was upset that he had lied to the commission about his 2 horses being dead because of me. And there was a letter in your packet from the man who buried one of the horses as being abused and died of natural causes. And the other horse that he said that I was responsible for killing was actually taken away by the Humane Society and taken to Marshall, where it was nursed back to health and remains to this day. So it wasn't a threat, it was you lied. And you shouldn't have lied when you're sending a letter to live with your body.
I still think we're going to she said territory, and I'd prefer to speak about the application.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. As far as the amount of equipment that I have, I don't see why I should be penalized for being successful in my business. You have been very thorough in talking to people. There are a number of letters there from customers. A lot of them you haven't seen yet. I know that you spoke to Foreman's Farms.
I did.
And you asked about the heavy equipment that's used there for a compost operation. And one of your specific questions was, is it necessary for it to have that large of equipment? If you look at today's packet, there are photographs of the machinery doing that very work itself. So I don't see any place in the regulation that you wrote or that you read about earth moving and repairing of this and that and flooring and whatnot, any of the things that we don't do. We do all of those as a licensed Class A contractor and a licensed land disturbance contractor. Furthermore, you bring up the storage containers, which are all, every single one of them and more, have been through the zoning process and permits have been issued and paid for, and they are outlined on the zoning maps as to the loss of land use property. We have not taken 1 inch of any of that. This was out of forestry. We maintain our land use status. We are probably one of the few people in the county, I won't say any, who actually have the tax assessor come out and count the number of bales that we make in order to verify, and watches us cut. We have to notify her before we cut, and we notify her when we pick them up. So that should not be an issue. I think that the problem here, or the disconnect that I'm having, is that I am being penalized for my success in the business of my choosing. And I think that is a right that everybody should have, is to work as they want, as long as they're not harming anybody or doing anything harmful to the general public. I know that you have spoken to Officer Riddle from the Virginia State Police. I have the most watched famous driveway in the county. Everybody coming into the scenic view of 211 knows there's a cop that sits over the hill. And I would like an acknowledgement of the fact that without this permit, he has pointed out to you that it is a safety issue for my coming in and out. You mentioned derelict vehicles. The county zoning administrator and the county administrator have gone through great pains and great effort with me to make sure that there are no derelict vehicles. Everything there has been inspected, and I am in compliance, as is one of the charges that was dismissed. I think maybe you see it different than the regulations see it, and I'd like that to be part of your deliberation.
Well, yeah, thank you. You're correct. I did talk to the woman from Four Winds Farm, and it was very helpful, and she certainly corroborated that part of your business activity that you described to me. I also, at your request, took most of one morning to meet with Officer Riddle, and that also was helpful, just on the question of traffic disruption. So I hope that as one of my constituents in the Hampton Voting District, you will at least recognize that I've gone to great lengths to be as fair and reasonable to gather all the facts, and on that basis, I'm, as mentioned, recommending denial of the application. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant or further discussion at this time?
Well, I noticed in the application there's no mention of what type of contractor's business you were planning on running from there. I mean, we've been into this thing for over a year, and we still don't know what you plan to do from there if you got the approval. So I don't know what to recommend approval.
Okay. I'm sorry. You were the only member that was not, and I admit to it, maybe it's my fault, you were the only member that I did not contact. Well,
you do plenty of that on social media, but we'll let that go.
Touche. As I had explained to others, it's mostly...
But it's not in the application, sir. That's the problem. What you say doesn't really matter because it's what's in the application that this board must approve.
I understand. I'm going to try to explain that. I was under the impression that when I made the application with Ms. Summers, that it was covered. So, and I've been told numerous times, including as she spoke before, that the application was completed. If there is a component that you mentioned like that is missing, it is more of an oversight of all the people that were together putting this thing together.
I don't know why it's an oversight, but it's a big.
I understand, it's not just my oversight, there was a lot of people involved, and that would become an issue, seeing as everybody else was involved in putting it together.
I've got grave concerns with us taking almost 4 years to get to this point with compliance issues. What kind of compliance issues we have down the road?
Well, and that is why I offered to do even a 6-month probationary.
Again, we fall into compliance issues.
No, I think that's maybe.
I mean, this application of yours is a result of compliance issues. It's taken the county and your neighbors almost 4 years to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only a result of the compliance issues that we've had with you at the property. So, I mean, I have to agree with the one individual that said, I don't know exactly what working with the county is.
I just wanted to chime in here to have a few comments as we get through this and vote in the next little bit here. I was on the planning commission while this application was in front of the planning commission, and indeed the kind of details that you are seeking, Mr. Frazier, I would say are fairly very fair, and what we indeed struggled with as a commission. This application came in front of us in February of last year, and we were canceled for a snowstorm. We sort of had an application by June. We tabled it. Ms. Summers worked, I think, for several months to scrape together the details for the application, and we finally, I believe, heard it at my last meeting in December. I believe was when we took the vote, because it wasn't eligible for the January meeting, and then it was taken off of last month's agenda by the applicant for this body. So it has been a year-long process to extract this application, and I just wanted to thank staff for their very hard work to put this together and to give us a clear way forward with this application. It was a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission to recommend denial of this application, and I think we did as fair and thorough a job as we could, given the information that we were presented.
Yeah, in Rappahannock, we don't have what they call overlay districts like they do in some of the adjoining counties. But, you know, I've been contacted by no one that's in support of it. And as a matter of fact, right across the road, just west of you, their property's in conservation easement, right on the road. So it's kind of like we're at dual purposes here. We recommend that people do things with their property to help the view shed, and then on the other hand, they feel like that we're disturbing the very foundation of the zoning ordinance itself with an application like yours.
You asked me about the business that we do.
It's not in the application.
I understand. It should be already in that package, if not it was emailed, because I have the notes here.
But it's not part of the application.
I thought that everything that we emailed in was part of the application. There was a listing of the work that we do in the original application, the hours of operation.
There's hours of operation.
The number of people, which would be just me and my son, my wife.
The type of business would be wide open because there's no mention of what you do. Like Mr. Whitson just read off what types of things are generally associated with a contractor's yard. There's nothing that you don't have.
We do all of those.
But it's not in the application. That's like the 8th time I think I've said that. I start to sound like a parrot. I can't vote on something that ain't here.
Okay.
I think we're kind of at the end of that question. I don't know that there's a clear answer in front of us.
I'm not going to get one, I guess.
Are there any other questions for the applicant at this time?
That's all I have right now.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Capiali.
Okay.
And with that, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Please remind me of what the I believe the motion was to deny the application based on 170-52, sections A and E, and principle 7 from the comprehensive plan. Was that correct?
That's correct. With the planning commission recommendation, which
My language was to, under 170-52A and E, general standards applicable to special exception permit applications and incorporating by reference the planning commission's recommendation for denial, which is based on principle 7 of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue? Aye. Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also. Thank you very much. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, and concludes the public hearings we have scheduled for this evening. The next item on the agenda was carried over. Oh, I'm sorry, we have public comment next. My apologies. Item 01. Sorry, we're heading into public comment.
As if we need more time.
Just wanted to give folks a minute to go through the room. All right, that does take us to the public comment portion of our agenda. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your hand and approach the microphone. You're recognized by the chair. State your name and the district that you're from, and do keep your comments to a few minutes. We should be outside. Anyone wishing to speak?
Really?
Yes.
You tricked us for a second.
Pardon me?
That would have been the first public comment period in which you didn't participate.
So I have a little bit now. Very few.
We appreciate that.
Okay, Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. I did want to say something about something that I found very interesting in the conversation earlier at the 2 o'clock meeting, and that was all the conversation about the building committee and about all the different assessments and studies and things that have been done about our various buildings that are in disrepair, and about the huge amount of money that it's going to cost. And I did not hear a single whisper of a conversation about grant money. And I think that's something that really needs to be incorporated, perhaps as a responsibility of that particular, of the building committee, as to these are historic buildings, I believe. And so I'm sure somewhere there's money to be had in wanting to preserve these buildings properly and not using Rappahannock County money. So I think that's a very important piece of information that didn't seem to enter into the conversation.
We looked into that a long time ago.
Pardon me?
We looked into that a long time ago.
I didn't hear it mentioned in today's meeting, guys. And that's why I'm bringing
It's
it up.
not really worth mentioning. It's not available. This is a public building.
I'm sorry, I do have to insist that the speaker at the microphone has the floor as I did earlier this meeting.
Am I allowed to have a conversation?
Well, I just,
No, I'm saying in regards to
wasn't
the
trying
other
to-
conversations in the room.
I wasn't trying to start a conversation, but our building committee already took all that up 2 years ago, maybe.
I've been to a lot of board of supervisors meetings, and I've never heard that specific stuff mentioned, and that's why I
It's not
brought
worth
it up.
mentioning.
Well, then maybe at the next meeting, you can have that addressed, and somebody can say, gee, we looked into that, and that it's not available. But I would really like to have somebody currently looking into something like that. Stuff comes up all the time, money gets screwed up all the time.
Well, we can certainly make another appointment to the building committee if you're willing to
Nope.
submit an application.
There are plenty of people who are qualified in grant money.
Yes, but they're not volunteering
I'm not
the
either,
job.
I'm not either. You people are elected to do your job, and I'm asking you to do it. Okay, the other thing I want to bring up is that it is March, and that I did go to several meetings last year regarding the comprehensive plan, and in December, I went through my notes again today. There was a joint meeting in which the representative from the consultant group had mentioned key items that needed to be addressed for the comprehensive plan to be in compliance. It is now March. I have not heard anything about the comprehensive plan nearing any kind of completion that would be appropriate, that they could then have a public hearing. And that was mentioned in December, that they thought with a little bit of tweaking it would be ready for public hearing, and I haven't heard that. So I'm just mentioning that again too as something I think needs to be addressed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frazier, do you have an update from the Planning Commission on the comp plan? I'd heard a rumbling that it might be June.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Planning Commission has been working diligently on the comp plan and rules of procedure. We got a little bit sidetracked there, I think, but we are working diligently on the comp plan. There was a little bit more work to it than maybe what some people thought a couple months ago, but we are nearing something that we can put out for public hearing very soon.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chester. Anyone else wishing to speak? And with that, I would move the public comment period closed. That takes us to a carryover item from earlier today, new business. We carried over item I-5, which is the RCV FRA Company 4 performance report, noting that a few folks from Company 4 will be able to join us this evening. So I just wanted to know if you all wanted to say anything at this time.
So you're referring to the performance report that was issued, I guess, by the association?
Yes, sir.
So with what some of the actions that we've already put in place and some of the policies that we got in effect, that was in effect, I guess, prior to kind of this coming out.
Excuse me, could you state your name?
Oh, Charles Burke, president of the Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue Company.
Sorry.
And then Bruce, chief. Some of the policies that we kind of had in effect, they said that we only respond to 38% of our calls for the 2019 period in the ambulance, and then 77% in the fire truck. We did try to recruit members, get members in. Do keep in mind though that Flint Hill, unlike every other company in Rappahannock County, Amosville, Sperryville, Castleton, we're more newer. We have younger generations in our department, unlike everybody else has retired people in that is allowed to run calls pretty much periodically throughout the day. I do know that several months ago, Bruce requested us to be removed off of dual dispatch because we were able to somewhat get out on calls a little bit better. Then members started going back to work a little bit more, and it's getting warmer outside, so work's picking up. But we did send a letter back to the Rappahannock County Sheriff and to Kevin Williams requesting us be put back on dual dispatch because of the kind of I guess, safety of the community. That way more calls are being answered and more ambulances are being put on the road when they need to be. They said the lack of standards that exist in the Company 4. Company 4 non-firefighters personnel requesting on the radio, requesting different counties to have us respond to calls. A policy that was placed in effect as of February 1st, 2020, and signed by Bruce and myself before this came out by Harold, that nobody is to call other counties without the direction of the chief. he is to do so if he feels it's necessary. People responding in POV in their vehicles. I know we had an issue of a complaint where people were running people off the roadway. Personnel that is responding into their vehicles, a policy that was placed into effect is February 1st. No one's to respond POV that's outside the county, because a lot of our members currently live in Front Royal or in different parts of the county or outside of Rappahannock County, and we respond from outside the county into the county. So no one's allowed to respond outside the county until they reach the county line, and then they're not to exceed the speed limit that what is posted. There remain 2 car lengths back from that car that's in front of them, even with their red light on. If the car pulls over, use due regard and go around them as necessary. Financial situations, we're in the process of switching over to QuickBooks. Our treasurer is going through a learning process right now. He should have that up and running within the next month or 2. He's going through a bunch of training and trying to learn QuickBooks. He's contacted Kay from Will Washington to get with her to figure all that out. They stated at the bottom of it in Article 40, or no, the bottom, in Article 59, that Company 4 failed to file the IRS 990 for the calendar year 2018. We contacted our person who does our taxes, and they advised us that they do have the copy of our IRS 990 form on file. They sent an email over to us, but unfortunately I have AT&T and I don't have service in this area. So I wasn't able to get that, so where that information came about, I don't really know. But members' certifications, it was reported in here that we had a member who was a non-certified person who was, I guess, is elected as an officer, but then found out that he was not a certified member. And then they stated in the report that we found out in August, but failed to do anything about it. We got with Ann Speaker, Little Washington, who used to be the chief, is now no longer the chief, who provided us contacts with the Virginia Department of Fire Programs to verify that member if he was a certified member or not. The, I guess, Virginia Department of Fire Programs, A.B. Grigsby, I think her name is, gave us his transcript, which told us that what we found that he was not. But then a few days later, that member provided us with a certification. So we had to go by with, oh, well, we have a certification. But myself and Bruce then forwarded that certification to the Virginia Department of Fire Programs via email and a fax. And they told us they would get back to us, which did not get back to us until they contacted Kevin, I guess, in January. So where they stated that we failed to do any actions against that member, which is wrong, because we went with what procedures we were trying to do. We contacted the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. He told us that, give me a little bit, I'll work on it, I'll get back to you. We followed up in December. He says that he's working on it. And then the next thing we know, we got a phone call from Kevin saying we have a meeting. Another thing is stated in here that Company 4 is bringing unrequested apparatus such as a brush truck to structure fires. Our brush truck is capability of fighting structure fires. It has a pump on it that is capable of fighting structure fires, and it also has a hookup and capability of an engine that arrives on scene to supply water through our brush truck to fight capable structure fires also. But actions that we are taking place, any purchases that is done through Flint Hill via our credit cards that we have through our apartment, you have to request a PO through our treasurer in order for that purchase to even be made. Any new members that join our department that has a certification that's already certified, they're not to operate as a firefighter or as a EMT lead until the certifications are verified through the state. All of our accounts outside the department through like Ramsey's, Napa, whatever, have been closed because myself, Bruce, and the treasurer all have company cards. If we have an account, we will use our card to purchase that. So no outside accounts have been required other than currently it settles, which we're in the process of switching to gas cards and doing away with even settles altogether so we can better track purchases with gas. And any handwritten receipts that are turned in are being denied unless you provide us with an actual receipt, or the member who turns in a handwritten receipt will be responsible for paying that bill until we actually have a receipt.
And then, yeah, let's terminate it.
Yeah, and then we've taken actions. One member who was provided some documentations, as soon as we found out from the Virginia Department of Fire Programs that he was not, that evening he was instantly terminated from the department. And then we've taken actions and we've started cleaning up the department. Some people have been unfortunately terminated. I know it doesn't look good for getting out for calls, but it's taking right actions to help us get back to where we need to be. But we're currently, we're advertising all the time. We're in need of firefighters, we're in need of EMTs, we're in need of drivers. But unfortunately, like I said, Flint Hill is more of the younger generation. Unlike everybody else who kind of has a lot of retired people, unfortunately, the only retired person we have is Bruce. And he is able to get out on our calls in the utility. It at least provides something out there to get manpower to somebody who needs help. It provides something to go into that person that's in need. Myself, Mikey, my wife Jessica just became an EMT. We have one person who is taking the state test to become an EMT. And then Kat is also an EMT, so we currently have roughly 4 to 5 EMTs and a handful of firefighters. But unfortunately, all of us work during the day, and in the evening hours is when we're able to get out more. But we're in the process of the next business meeting, which is coming up on Thursday, of implementing a staffing plan where everybody who, if you don't work, come down to the station and staff as much as possible. Like myself, I have 3 kids. I live in Front Royal and all my kids are still in diapers. So a lot of my time devotes to them. So we're doing it. But any questions?
It's a great overview.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, very good.
I think that answers a lot of the questions I had about what you all were doing to proactively work on some of these things that have come to light. Does anyone have any other questions? The county attorney's gone. He was here for our public hearing. We have to operate as a board within our fire services agreement for the roles that we all agreed to when we took on that agreement. You all agreed to provide certain services. We agreed to support you in intangible ways and to pay the bills. There aren't a lot of details as to what to do when there is a shortcoming by either party, enforcement or consequences look like. This is sort of uncharted territory. And I think that we should ask the county attorney for an opinion. By the 11th would be nice if it's possible for when we have our budget meeting, but if not, certainly by our next board meeting about what our role is as a board in terms of enforcement and consequences in accord with the fire services agreement. I'd like to hear other conversation from other members of the board about this, but I think that there should be I mean, these are profound problems you all have been having. And it was not negotiable to me that you went back on dual dispatch. And I understand that that request is now in, and I thank you for doing that. I think that is absolutely paramount for public safety that you asked for that, and I thank you for doing so. And what you volunteer to do and tell us, and I think you're bringing all of these details to us tonight, is very helpful. I would kind of hope that we could work through a period where you kept us informed of things as they are progressing, and solutions that you find, and work with staff and the association hand in glove to make sure you are setting yourselves up to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I know Bruce is not really computer savvy, still stuck in his ways, but if anybody has ever anything with outside of the meetings or anything, I'm very responsive to emails, phone calls. Not so much. I work HVAC, so I'm always underneath of crawl spaces. But if an email comes through, usually I can type something up real quick or voice talk it in my phone. And over here, I respond. Email comes through within a couple hours. I usually have an answer. I'll figure it out.
Thank you, Charles. Anyone else?
I'm just grateful to hear that you're putting, some steps in to try and take care of all this.
We're trying. Yeah.
But, I took the EMT class twice through Flint Hill, and it was quite a bit different these days.
Yes.
Now we're on top of the world.
And now the state test, we currently have, my wife just went through it, and it's a very strenuous test you have to go through now. And you start taking the test, and you think you're doing good, and then all of a sudden they just shut you off, and you don't know if you fail, you don't know if you pass until a couple weeks later. And, but we do have two that we're waiting for results back from the test. One just recently took, one we just got passed. So once we get her trained a little more, she'll officially be released from calls with the sign off of Dr. Jinks. And then we're also in the process of going through our big EMS inspection coming up too, and that's a big step of getting ready to a lot of clean house.
Kevin, I know you've been very engaged with this too. Did you have anything to add?
No, the only thing I want to say is, one, I'm glad to hear that they're working toward implementing policies and everything. That's what's needed to be done the whole time and everything. I guess this is kind of more toward dealing with some of the stuff that was outlined with the association. Is that if anybody joins, one thing was pointed out with meeting with fire programs or whatever, a transcript overrides certifications. Right. So if you have a transcript that's not showing everything for them, and it's not showing firefighter one, that right there, as fire programs told us, that's why they're saying in August y'all knew that this gentleman didn't have it because the transcript didn't show it. So just remember in the future, if they can't give you a certificate or you truly want to know, the transcript overrides our certificate, which we learned in this situation.
Right, and then where I got where it stated that we knew back in August, that kind of, I don't know where you got that information
That
from.
was in the meeting with Bruce and I from Dave Jolly that said that the department knew in August when he provided you the transcript.
Because we didn't pull the transcript, I had the emails, we didn't pull the transcript until October.
Yeah, he said when we had a conversation in August, that's when.
And the transcript that Mr. Jolly had wrong social security number. It wasn't just all social security number.
Either way, if he wasn't for sure, he shouldn't have put it in his office.
And then technically too, he didn't actually become an officer until January 1st of this year. And then we found out January, I don't know, we had a meeting a couple weeks into January. So when we put him in as an officer in January 1st, we found out a couple weeks later and then was instantly
And that's
termination.
more, and speaking for them, or not trying to speak for them, but that's more fault is more on that member for doing something to that aspect than them or whatever. And I think they did the right thing with that member once it was realized and everything is out there, what's going on. Another thing is great on the policy for POV and all, but myself, the sheriff's office, and all need to know who do we call if that policy is being not followed.
Yeah.
So that's
It's-
one thing,
Yeah.
that I don't need it tonight, email who, whatever, if complaints come in on this is who we turn it over to, because like in the past, I went down to the station and spoke to some of the individuals when they came in to verify, yep, that's where they were going. That's no more, it's going to be turned over to be dealt with.
Right, and to relay on that too, I mean, I put in here, as to read out, it's responding to POV within the county.
Right.
Only once you cross over Chester Gap, you can turn on your light and respond. And then if a complaint is called into you or to the sheriff's office, you let myself as president or Bruce as the chief to know. And then that person that is responding in that POV that had a complaint filed on them will be placed on a 72-hour suspension until further review, until we can figure out in detail.
Yeah, don't give me an email, just pick up the phone and call me.
I'm glad to hear y'all doing that, but I will say that we need to make sure we enforce it, because there was still a no on early as last week. So just make sure it's enforced and pushed to the members and everything. And the only other thing I've got is, this is just for you guys to know, I know you spoke in here about Rush 4 and all that, responding, capable of fighting structure fires and everything. That is not a Class A pumper. Do not put anybody on into that hose line fighting a structure fire. That is not our Class A pumper. That's a huge liability. Staying in the yard, spraying in the window, great, but don't use it as a Class A pumper for interior structure fire fighting. And we can talk a whole lot more about that and give you the information you need to say, this is why we can't do that.
What call are you talking about? I'm not aware of that call.
Air Mountain Road, when that came in, we had a non-firefighter bring the brush truck out and got there and just parked it on the side of the road. Didn't have his gear with him or anything.
Yeah, Robert, no, I wasn't usually, he's not a firefighter on scene.
That's what happened, body copy, didn't have utility.
Right. But I don't want them having their head that they can use that as a Class A pumper.
Okay.
That's not the case. And we can talk more about that and everything, but other than that, that's all. Unless y'all have questions.
I would just say,
No,
I totally understand the spotlight that you guys, it's a very bright one on you right now from a lot of different angles. You know, this community loves the volunteers, and it's all about safety and confidence in your ability to do what you do. So we're trying to help as much as possible. And if you need additional help, you ask, don't wait. But I appreciate you standing in front of all of us having this conversation, because I know it's not an easy one. But there's, a lot of work to get done, but it sounds like you've made huge leaps since we started this. So.
Yes.
Yeah. We do need volunteers though.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Like everybody else. We need volunteers.
Yes, sir. Anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, I really wanted to thank you for your presentation tonight. It's very impressive. I've had a little bit of experience with Company One, and when I was on that board, particularly on the financial compliance side, I saw their need for improvement, specifically moving from Quicken to QuickBooks. So that's music to my ears.
Yes.
And I think once training is complete, your folks will find that to be a much better tool for managing expenses and income, especially given the complexity that's been imposed upon you with fire levy money, et cetera, insurance reimbursement. So that's all good news. I received this morning a very impassioned phone call from a citizen who lives not too far from your company. And on the one hand, he expressed how close he holds your company to his heart, And that's been the case with his family for a long time, but he also expressed to me that as his representative, it's my job to make sure I do my job and provide oversight. And in any event, we'll do that, as Ms. Donahue said, in as most helpful way as possible. We all want you to succeed. We respect all that you do and all the hours, time, and energy that go into volunteering to serve our community. So let's just agree that we'll all work together to try to get you guys on the right track. And again, I appreciate everything you said tonight. You did a good job.
Yes, and I know with the recent audit, I guess, coming up from the county, again, I know we were recently audited recently, and then we're being audited again this year. Some of the material weaknesses that they found on the last audit, we're in the process of fixing them. A lot of it was some of the CDs wasn't showing up on the ledgers and stuff, which is all in the process of starting to show up once we're transitioning to the QuickBooks. It's all right there, but I don't think it's going to be shown on this audit that it's there, but it's there.
Anyone else? I would like for the next meeting, I would like to have an update from Mr. Williams, if you'd be willing to update us if there's been anything happening in regards to Company 4. I think we need to get a monthly update if you hear of anything going on. Is that appropriate?
That's fine. I'd like for one of them to be present as well. So
Well, and I would ask for a similar report from you all, either in person or via email as well, on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I think written would be good enough for me, but I didn't know what you were asking for.
I think one from staff, in case they hear of anything, and then one generated from the company itself. I think that's appropriate. Then we hear both sides, and hopefully the two sides match. Best case scenario.
I mean, I know you say an email, but I like to do more in person.
Yeah.
That way you get the actual from face to face instead of reading off the paper, because you don't know exactly between the lines.
Well, I think we only have one public hearing next month, so it shouldn't be such a long meeting. And the other thing, do we as a board want to get an opinion from the county attorney as to consequences and
Yeah, I think we're in new territory. We've never really been here before.
Okay, so we will, I'll consider that a motion to seek that opinion from the county attorney.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I think that concludes
Thank you.
our discussion, and we'll look forward to hearing from you next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to adjournment. If I have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
And second? Aye. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.